Hi, everyone. Namaste, and welcome to our podcast, Simply Explained. We want to take this time to welcome all of you and hope that our simple yet significant discussion on topics around the world and how we are influenced will bring some light to everyday activities. What we want to talk about today is about being an influencer. And I'm with Bhuvan today and hoping to have a very fruitful conversation on being an influencer.
Hmm.
I think that it is important to understand the importance of being an influencer. So, who is an influencer? Right? An influencer, I'm sure you all know, but we'll go this through. An influencer is one who has significant impact on others based on the way they speak, based on the way they dress, based on the way they make decisions, based on the way they conduct business, generally based on the way they conduct life. Um, I think from a family perspective, we look at an influencer as the father or the mother, because they obviously will have a tremendous amount of influence on the children, the way they conduct themselves. Children in a home look forward to their parents because they don't know better.
Hmm.
They are looking at their parents as the one guiding them, making decisions for them until they're at a certain age, of course, and they start doing
Like
that.
early on in their life, they're the ones that basically set all the foundations, all the fundamentals, all the values into their lives, so they can have the guidance, or they can give the guidance rather to the children, so that they could live the best life that they can.
Absolutely. So we look at from a family perspective, who is the influencer? That is the mother, the father, the guardian, and the one takes care. So from a community perspective, we look at the leaders of our community. So we have many leaders of our community. We have our religious leaders, spiritual leaders, community leaders, activists, the way they carry themselves. Politicians, local, provincial, federal politicians. So different levels of leadership that are influencers in our daily lives. And our lives, I believe, are severely impacted by who I call influencers. Now, what I really want to talk about is the kind of world that we live in today, where we, in most cases, I think, from what I've heard and seen, is where we are behaving in a way where we think we're not influencers, where we think we're just living to please ourselves or to
Hmm.
satisfy ourselves. And the saying, right? What I do is my business, how I
Yeah,
dress is
yeah.
my business, or what I wear is my business.
When in reality, you're always being watched, you're always being followed.
Yeah.
Like, people always have an eye on you and always paying attention to you, especially in this day of social media, where people are basically posting about what they do in their life, and there are always people watching you, making judgments, having their own thoughts.
Well, yeah, and there is that,
Hmm.
right? And I have a concern with that as well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where we're going to be judged by people, or people are going to have their opinions about us, and that will never change. I think if we're looking to live in a world where we're just going to be doing what we do and not care about people what they think, is a whole different thing. But I have a severe concern in living in a world where we are living selfishly, right? When I say selfishly, I mean, you know, I agree that what you wear is your business. I agree what you eat is your business. What you drink with your business is your business. But I also agree that we have to be conscious that what you wear, eat, drink, listen to, whatever you sing, whatever you speak, whatever decisions you make, you are actually going to significantly impact someone around you.
That is true, because I know in chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, which is the chapter all about actions. And there's one part where it talks about where the actions that is performed by someone great will always, they will always have followers who will always look up to them, who look at them as their role model, and who always looks at them for when they are in need of advice.
Yeah, and it's about, it says, whatever a great person does, others
Hmm.
will follow. right? So what defines greatness? And I think that's important to understand. Greatness, because some child is beside you, they look upon a grown up as a great one. They look upon a grown up as someone who has actually, lived life, has embraced life, and they want to walk the steps that person walk. And for that reason, I do not believe, and I think I'm entitled to an opinion as everybody else is. I do not believe, or my opinion is that we cannot live in a world where everything we do is about ourselves, to satisfy ourselves alone. Because we are influencers in many ways, right? They coming to Canada, coming to United States from different parts of the world, it is very, very visible. I don't think this can be hidden. It is very visible that many of us have left our simple way of dressing, our simple way of eating, our simple way of celebrating, and we have embraced somewhat a more, a more celebratory form of doing things, a more luxurious form of doing things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we have forgotten a lot about the simple things that have made us who we are, and this is primarily because we were influenced by someone to do that.
Like you and I have seen this like many times, like in different forms of media, such as the news or movies and stuff like that, where or just in real life examples where people they want to embrace the new modern way, which is all fine because the world is constantly
There's nothing wrong with modern,
yeah,
of course, yeah.
because but where it starts to not become good is where they start to forget their simple values and their roots and basically the simple things where they came from.
Absolutely. So let us break this down because I think we influence people in different ways. So when we were growing up back in the days, and there's a saying that this time, a long time, or this time is not like long time or long ago, or many years or yesteryears, right? We were expected to dress in a certain way back in the village, back in the country, because when we dressed, you're actually reflecting your bringing up. You're reflecting your parents' values. You're reflecting the values of your tradition, your lineage, and everything. That has changed a lot. Like you couldn't wear a ripped jeans, you can wear a ripped jacket or something. And I want to be clear here. I have absolutely nothing against who wear that kind of stuff. I've always been
It was just the expectations
absolutely.
back then.
I've always been clear about my views of life, and I don't think that judging someone is my role here. But I think that just to make the point that there was a time when you couldn't wear that. Like if you had a rip on your pants, you had to patch it up, you had to stitch it up, and you had to wear it. But now it is a fashion. It's a fashion, and it's not a fashion that has come from the Caribbean or come from the East. It is a fashion that the saying is that whatever America does becomes the fashion of life.
Because it's always the western part, like especially America, the United States, which is watched by the entire world.
Absolutely. Let's take other things, for example. That's dressing. Let's take yoga, right? Yoga today is embraced because America says this is how it's supposed to be, right? A temple teaches yoga, yeah, a few people will follow or so. But when a Western person says this is yoga, this is how it's supposed to be, and they will say the language or so, what happens? People become influenced by it much more because it is the West that said so, right? It is America that said, or Canada that says so.
Yeah.
Which means that we are certainly influenced by the space that we live in. The simple things, in my opinion, are no longer accepted. They are considered old-fashioned. And it's not disturbing, but it is a fact that we have to look at and ask, where are we going, or where do we go from here? Right? Because what else are we going to be influenced by? Going to India over the years, I've seen in in many parts of India, there were, pure vegetarian places. In some of the hotels we stayed, for example, in Tirupati, we stayed at a hotel there. I think was 3-4 years ago. I went there.
And then we went in December.
Yeah, the first time I went. It was a pure vegetarian hotel. I mean, pure vegetarian because it's in Tirupati. Then we went in 2019, and then they brought in all this non-vegetarian food. Why? You talk to the people there, and they're influenced by the West.
Yeah, like because when you think about it, the only reason people are going there is to get the darshan of Tirupati Balaji, and like no one would really go there just to be at the place, and and then when they started including, like non-vegetarian food there, and then you go to see God, and
Well, yeah. So, talking about the influence, I think that if everyone thinks that they have the ability to have an influence over someone, we have to now look at the way we do things, which is speak, live, dress in a certain way that I'm not even bringing religion into this. I'm not bringing culture into this. I'm just saying that we have a significant impact on people's lives, and we have to in every way try to make sure that what we do is not only for the self. Because if we're just dressing and eating and doing these basic fundamental things to please the self or to satisfy the self, then, I mean, the animals don't think that way, right? The world was created in such a way where it is not a selfish place to live in. I mean, if it was a selfish place to live in, then we just have the earth.
yeah.
Right, we'll just have the earth. But the earth is not selfish. The earth has given us, it is fertile. It has given us the trees.
The earth has given us so many resources, so many things for us to live off of, like oxygen, fruits, so many things.
Absolutely. Then we have vegetation. So, the trees are there, and the trees just could be there. But where the trees going to get water from and nutrition from? So it is shared by, it's given by the earth, it's given by the rains. So the whole universe is created in such a way that everything is dependent on the other to survive.
Like when you learn about ecosystems and things like that, you learn how there are different food chains, and if certain animals go extinct, then that could shake up like many different ecosystems. So, like you learn about like different places in nature, like near the sea and primarily in the land or in deserts and things like that. And simple changes can make simple things that don't happen can make drastic changes to a certain place. Like deserts, for example, they like become created because of the lack of rain. And because of that, all of the vegetation, all of the plants, all of the grass, things like that, it all gets dried out just because of a simple change.
Well, you know what they say? They say that that if all the humans would vanish from the earth today, the earth will flourish. But if all the worms and the insects and animals were to vanish from the world today,
then we would all be suffering.
Then we will all suffer. In about a couple of years, we'll all be destroyed. Which tells us, about our value that we live in. And I'm forced to go back to religion and the teachings of scriptures, because I believe that a person of faith, a person of belief, a person who's influenced by traditions and religion, for example, and faith, they have certain fundamental beliefs. If we're going to be influencers, which means that we are learning from the earth how to share and to give back and how to help others rise, then we have to look at the very simple things that we do, which is carry yourself in such a way that can help another person grow. Live a life in such a way that will make a very positive impact on somebody else. Now, the thing is, not everyone will accept the way we live. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But as long as we have decided that we're going to try our best to make decisions that are going to influence people in the positive way, it's not going to be accepted by anyone. There's nothing wrong with that. But at least we will live knowing that we have done our best to help people in a good way, right? Now, good is another subjective word for a lot of people.
Yeah, that is true.
So how I do things, how I eat, how I drink, how I exercise, how I, that is even subjective in many ways. But the point is, I think that generally it is not a proper way, it is not a proper decision, it is not a proper approach of life to say that I'm going to live or do things the way I want to do it, because it just pleases me. Because we're not living in a time anymore where we are just living in this world. Every single person looks at you, and if you can make a change in one person's life, I think that is enough of change that we can make, and that is a great contribution that we can make towards someone's life, right? So it is important. It is very, very important for us to live not selfishly, but selflessly. And that goes in every aspect of our life that we're living. So I think let us look at you. I mean, from a young person's perspective, right? I have not, I have not really, I don't put anyone down because of any of these things, but I think that there is room for improvement in any way, in every way. A young person today, as they're growing up in Canada, and I wasn't brought up in Canada, but what do you look for, to be influenced? Like, how are you influenced? Who is your influencer?
Well, so my main influence, well, the main people who influence my lives are you and mom, because you are the ones who raised me, gave me all the values, and basically shaped me into into what I am today. And you're the one, and you and mom are the ones that basically, influenced me, and you gave me the values to always be selfless, to serve to others. You
But
taught me
but
about.
but how is that? How is that like when you go to school, for example?
Oh yeah.
Do you have a different influencer at school than you have at home, or does that influence at home prepare you for school?
Well, I think it's more the second one, because at school we like go there to learn different subjects and things like that. But the thing is, we also have our teachers as well who teach us many things, but they could also be a role model to us, and or an influencer to us in
Right,
some
but then
ways.
again, you'll go to school, and then your mom and dad will dress in a certain way, will speak in a certain way, will carry themselves in a certain
And then
way.
the teacher will be different from that.
Yeah, teacher is one thing, but then there's your friends.
Oh yeah, that's true.
They're your friends, right? They may speak in a language like our West Indian folks, for example. The ones who were brought up in line with traditions and religions, so they never said yo, and they never said some of the slangs we hear these days. But we hear our children are actually saying a lot of that. What do you think that came from?
I mean, that must have come from people outside of our family, such as our friends, or when we go to school and we meet different people who talk in different ways, use different vocabulary and things like that. I think so. It probably, because now, as someone who is exposed to many different things across different forms of media, from in person and things like that, you're introduced to many different things, and you choose to accept different things, and you can, well, not you can you can choose to accept many different things, but sometimes you're also influenced by many things around you.
And that is why my fundamental belief has been that my primary influencers are my parents,
Yeah.
right? Because in my time, you couldn't do something wrong because you first of all had to think about doing something wrong, right? And you had to think about what you're gonna wear. You're gonna think about who you're gonna hang out with. You gotta think about what words you use because whatever you did would get back to them,
Hmm.
right? And when it gets back to them, it was not like it was a fear that you're gonna be disciplined by your parents, but we were so concerned about how it will impact their lives because they are our God, they are influencers, and we were so careful about how are they going to be reacting to this emotionally, physically,
Hmm.
and all that because we were very conscious, and I think children are today still conscious about the impact that their behavior, their way of carrying themselves and their actions, how is that really going to impact their children,
Yeah, that is
their parents?
yeah, because whenever I'm doing something, and let's say I'm like maybe someone's trying to tell me to do something, and it's not right. You always have that gut feeling. Your hands start to shake and things like
Yeah.
that, and then you start to think about like if your parents would I guess accept.
Well, in our time, we used to sweat. The minute you even think about doing something wrong, right? You know that your greatest influencers, how they're gonna feel, and you start to sweat.
You start to sweat. You start to tremble. You
Yeah.
start to get all like trembly and stuff like that.
Yeah, but then again, there are pro-life, right? There's pro-choice, and there's pro-life, and this today everything there is a pro for. There's, so, and again, there are those who may think very independently that, listen, the way I dress is my business. You have no way to judge, or you have no right to judge. Of course, I agree with you 100%, and even more. I agree with you. I think you have the right as an individual to make choices that pleases you. However, my opinion as well is that those choices should be made with by thinking about the well-being of others around you, right? Thinking about them, because a parent does that. A parent does that. A teacher does that. A leader does that. When they act, they think about how it's going to be impacting their community. Now, let's go on a national level. Like we have a government, for example. A government today has to make certain decisions, and it's for political reasons, but it is a decision because they're influencers. So whatever they do on a political level or on a national level, they have to be careful about how it will impact the country, because obviously they won't get votes, they won't get support to go back there and to do the good work or the not so good work you're doing. So even at a non-family level, or government level or leadership level outside of our family, they are actually thinking about their actions, what they're going to do, and how it's going to impact the country, the community, and smaller aspects of people's lives.
Because especially in like politics and things like that, you're always, especially as a politician, you're always being looked at in one way or another, and many people have different views about you, and all of your choices and all of your actions are being looked at, and your opinions are being looked at. So that's why they always have to be for, I guess they have to be for those who they have to always provide for a lot of people, and to make sure people have their rights and things like that.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. So I think the way we summarize this is, we have our liberty, we have our freedom of choice. We're going to be deciding what we wear, what we eat, how we live our life. No doubt about that. I don't think anybody should tell you about those kind of things. I think at the same time, while we do that, and here's how we summarize this. While we do that, while we decide what we wear, decide what we eat, decide what we do, decide what we speak, while we do that, we have to be careful about the impact it's going to make in people's lives. If we are selfish, then we're only going to think about how it will impact me, right? And if life is about you alone and no one else around you, then that's fine. But if we're going to make a decision on all those things, and keep in the back of your mind how it will impact people around you, how it's going to impact their well-being in a very positive way, then we'll be more careful about how we make those decisions.
Like I know you for example, you're always like when we have Shanti Satsang or when you're doing Katha, people are always listening to you and going for your guidance and stuff, and your actions affect people in a positive way. Your actions can always impact someone in many ways.
Absolutely. And I think that's the way we have to carry ourselves. Like if I'm only a priest on a weekend, then to be a priest is a lifestyle. It's not a weekend gig. And so if I'm a priest on the weekend, then that's not going to work.
Like when people say, "Oh," when they say, "Oh, it's Sunday, I can't lie,"
Yeah.
and then in the back of your mind, you just like, "Wait, have you been lying to me all these other days?"
Correct. Well, we want to wrap this discussion up today, and continue to encourage you to join in the podcast and click like on the YouTube channel as well. Subscribe so that we can bring you these videos again. Be careful. Live your life, of course, independently. Make your choices as it will impact you and others around you. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Namaste.